Have you ever looked into a Scorpio's eyes and felt like they already knew everything about you? Not just your secrets, but your lies, your fears, your betrayals, even the ones you haven't committed yet. Welcome to the path to Buddhist wisdom, where we don't just talk about astrology, we decode it. Today, we venture deep into the enigmatic world of Scorpio, the sign of transformation, intuition, and silent strength. This is not a light conversation. This is an emotional excavation of what happens when you betray someone who feels everything, deeply, dangerously, and spiritually. These are 20 powerful reasons why crossing a Scorpio is not just a bad idea. It's a karmic mistake. Let's begin. New Moon Reason 20. The emotional elephant memory. You might forget the fight. They won't. You might forget what you said in anger. They won't. You might even believe the apology erased the pain. But for a Scorpio, pain is archived, not deleted. A Scorpio remembers the feeling of betrayal with cinematic detail. They don't just recall what happened, they remember what it felt like when it happened. The room, the silence, the break in trust, the look in your eyes. This isn't about vengeance. It's about emotional justice. They trusted you. That's sacred to them. And now it's tainted. A student of mine once told me her Scorpio friend forgave her after a big lie. Years passed. They were still close. But suddenly, during a tense moment, her friend brought up the lie with razor-sharp clarity. She hadn't forgotten. She was just waiting for the perfect emotional context to remind her how deep the wound was. Scorpios don't explode. They wait. And in that waiting, the pain crystallizes into a truth that time cannot soften. They carry emotional memory like monks carry sacred scrolls, with reverence, precision, and permanence. Scorpion Reason 19. Revenge is not reaction, it's ritual. People say revenge is petty. But for Scorpio, it's poetic. It's not about hurting you. It's about restoring balance in a world you knocked off kilter. A Scorpio will not retaliate out of rage. Rage clouds judgment. They will retreat into themselves, recalibrate, and return with a plan so perfectly tailored to the harm you caused that it feels divine. I once heard a Scorpio man say, "I don't break people. I just give them what they gave me, in a language they finally understand." He waited 2 years to take a single action against a friend who betrayed him, not with fire, but with silence, with distance, with undeniable consequences. This isn't manipulation. It's art. To a Scorpio, betrayal is a spiritual imbalance. Their revenge is simply the realignment of energies. I Reason 18. Deadly observers. You're chatting, laughing, feeling at ease. But the Scorpio is not just listening. They're recording. Every inflection in your voice, every micro-expression, every contradiction between your words and your energy. They are emotional forensic experts, reading the invisible ink behind every interaction. Their intuition isn't loud, but it's always present. Let me give you a real-world example. In a group project at university, a Scorpio classmate told me after the first meeting, "Don't trust Jason. He talks too much when he's unsure." Weeks later, Jason fumbled a major deadline and tried to cover it up. She already knew because she observed what no one else bothered to see. If you betray a Scorpio, understand. They already know your emotional soft spots. They saw them before you did. And when the moment comes, they won't shout, they'll aim. Brain Reason 17. They never show their cards. Scorpios don't overshare. They underexpress with surgical intention. They've mastered the art of mystery, a cloak of quietness that makes them impossible to read. You might think you've won an argument or outmaneuvered them in a relationship. But the truth? If you feel victorious over a Scorpio, they let you. They speak less to conceal and more to control. Not in a manipulative way, but in a powerful, spiritual way. They understand the law of energy, that what you keep hidden often holds more power than what you reveal. A Scorpio ex of mine once listened to me rant for an hour without interrupting. At the end, she smiled, nodded, and said, "Thanks for showing me what I needed to know." That was the last conversation we ever had. When a Scorpio stays silent, it's not because they're weak. It's because they're finished, long before you even realize the game was over. Zippermouth Face Reason 16. Their silence is the punishment. Imagine walking into a room and feeling like you don't exist. That's what a Scorpio's silence feels like after you've hurt them. They won't curse you. They won't confront you. They'll just shut off access to their soul. It's a sacred kind of withdrawal, a spiritual disappearing act. They'll vanish emotionally, and the emptiness will echo louder than any scream could. I've met people who said, "I wish she had just yelled at me. At least then I'd know she cared." But no, the Scorpio doesn't need to prove their pain. They'll let their absence haunt you like a ghost of who they used to be in your life. They don't shut the door. They watch it close itself. And when it does, it stays closed. Forever. Fire reason 15. They turn pain into power. For most people, pain breaks them. But for a Scorpio, pain is raw material. They don't crumble in the face of betrayal, they evolve. Imagine a blacksmith taking shattered pieces of their heart and reforging them into armor. That's how a Scorpio processes hurt. I once knew a woman, a Scorpio, who was left at the altar, devastated, humiliated. But instead of collapsing under the emotional weight, she built a new life, launched a business, and later became a counselor for women recovering from betrayal. She didn't bury the pain. She transmuted it. This is what makes them dangerous, not because they hurt, but because they learn from hurt. They emerge sharper, colder, and far more untouchable than before. For Scorpios, transformation is not a phase. It's a lifestyle. They rise like molten glass hardened in fire. You might think you broke them, but really, you just gave them a reason to become indestructible. Fire reason 14. They are naturally intense. There's no such thing as casual with a Scorpio. Whether it's love, friendship, or revenge, they dive all in. Their energy is full spectrum, all fire, no filter. When they love, it's soul deep. When they're loyal, it's absolute. But when they're betrayed, the same intensity that once made you feel cherished turns volcanic. This is why being close to a Scorpio is both a blessing and a risk. You feel seen like never before, but that same piercing gaze becomes terrifying if you cross them. A Scorpio's emotional weather system isn't always calm. It's wild, beautiful, and unpredictable, like a thunderstorm that can nourish or destroy. I remember a Scorpio teacher I had. He praised with passion and corrected with fire. But once, when a colleague betrayed him, his entire presence shifted. No yelling, no gossip, just distance. And you could feel the room freeze when he entered. That's Scorpio intensity. You feel them even when they say nothing. And if you cross them, their emotional storm doesn't need lightning. It only takes their silence. Blackheart reason 13. They see your darkness and accept it until you break their trust. Scorpios are drawn to the broken, the hidden, the wounded. They don't love the mask, they love what lies beneath it. They know your flaws before you admit them. And not only do they accept them, they protect them. But if you betray that trust, they'll expose what they once sheltered, not for vengeance, but for truth. A friend of mine once told me his Scorpio ex never judged his childhood trauma, his addictions, or his fears. But when he cheated on her and gaslit her, she didn't scream. She just left, and when she did, she told the truth he spent years hiding from others. He wasn't angry at her for leaving. He was angry that she saw the real him and stopped protecting it. That's the paradox of Scorpio. They love deeply, but if you break their trust, they won't attack your image. They'll reveal the truth because they know the weight of what you buried. They are guardians of secrets. But once you make them enemies, they hold a mirror to your soul. Person in lotus position, reason 12. They control their emotions, and yours, too. Scorpios don't just feel. They command emotion, both theirs and yours. They can sit in a room full of chaos and be the calmest presence. But that calm is not passive, it's power. They've mastered emotional self-discipline, and in doing so, they gain the ability to shift the emotional energy of everyone around them. Ever noticed how a Scorpio doesn't panic in a crisis? They observe, process, respond, and when they speak, it's surgical, like they've rehearsed the moment in silence for days. My mentor once described Scorpio energy like this. It's like standing next to still water that hides an entire ocean beneath. You think it's calm until the current pulls you under. If you betray a Scorpio, you'll realize how little control you ever had. They were reading you the entire time, not to manipulate, but to understand, to know where your soul is hiding and how it moves. And when they finally let go, you'll feel the vacuum, not because they yelled, but because their absence feels like the removal of gravity. Nazar Amulet reason 11. Their intuition is a weapon, not a trait. Scorpios don't guess. They know. Long before facts arrive, long before lies unfold, They've already felt the shift in your energy. Their intuition isn't just strong, it's surgical. A Scorpio mother I once interviewed told me, "I knew my son was lying about something the day he didn't hug me like he usually does. Turns out, he'd crashed the family car and tried to cover it up. She sensed it in his absence of warmth." That's Scorpio intuition. They read energy, not evidence. So if you betray them, don't expect a confrontation right away. They don't act until they're sure. But once they are, it's too late. They don't ask questions. They deliver closure. And here's the terrifying part. You'll never know when they figured it out. They may have known for weeks, just waiting to see if you'd tell the truth. When you didn't, they knew exactly what you were capable of. That's why crossing a Scorpio isn't just dangerous. It's foolish, because they sensed your betrayal before you even made it. Man-standing reason 10, they don't need your approval. You can't control someone who doesn't need to be liked. Scorpios aren't here to charm the crowd or earn applause. They're here to be true, even if that truth makes others uncomfortable. And that's what makes them so powerful. They don't shrink themselves to fit in. They don't conform to please others. And when betrayed, they won't ask, "What did I do wrong?" They'll ask, "What did you reveal about yourself?" A Scorpio friend of mine once got cut out of a social group after she confronted someone's hypocrisy. Everyone turned their backs on her. You know what she did? Nothing. She never defended herself. She never chased after them. Instead, she built a new life, new friendships, ones rooted in truth, not popularity. That's the Scorpio code. They don't beg to be understood. They withdraw to protect their energy. So if you betray them, don't expect drama. Expect distance. And don't mistake their silence for weakness. It's actually a declaration of power. I don't need your validation to know my worth. Brain reason 9, they are soul strategists. Most people play checkers with emotions, fast, reactive, sloppy. Scorpios play chess. Every move is calculated. Every reaction is intentional. And every silence is a signal. They're not just emotionally intelligent, they're emotionally strategic. They see patterns others miss. They read beneath the surface, sensing motives before words are even spoken. I once knew a Scorpio therapist who could sit in silence with a client and still shift the emotional temperature of the room. She didn't need to speak. Her gaze, her presence, her energy spoke volumes. This is what makes them so dangerous when crossed. They know you. They know what drives you, what hurts you, and what you're afraid to admit, even to yourself. So when they finally act, it's not impulsive. It's precise. It's spiritual justice served on cold intuition. They don't destroy you in anger. They dismantle you with understanding. Fire reason 8, they awaken intense passions. You don't just know a Scorpio. You experience them. They bring emotions to the surface you didn't even know you had. They don't do halfway connections. With them, it's all fire, depth, and vulnerability. That intensity can be intoxicating. You feel alive around them. Seen, desired, and that emotional imprint? It never fades. But here's the thing. Once you betray them, that emotional fire disappears. And suddenly, everything feels dull. I've met people who've said, "I've dated others since her, but it's never the same." That's the Scorpio scar. They awaken your soul, and when they leave, they take the flame with them. And you're left with an ache for something you didn't just lose, but something you may never find again. Betraying a Scorpio isn't just ending a relationship. It's forfeiting an emotional experience that most people spend lifetimes chasing. Candle reason 7, they master the art of mystery. Try as you might, you'll never truly know everything about a Scorpio. And that's by design. They reveal just enough to intrigue you, but never enough to be fully understood. Their silence, their pauses, the way they answer a question with a look instead of words, it's not hesitation. It's control. Scorpios protect their inner world like monks protect sacred scriptures. Not everyone is allowed to read their truth. And that mystery? It draws people in. It's magnetic, but it's also dangerous. You might fall in love with the idea of them, only to realize later you never really knew who they were. And if you betray them, they won't fight. They'll vanish. And that disappearance will leave you wondering if the connection was ever even real. Their silence becomes a riddle you can't solve. Their absence, a question with no answer. You don't get closure from a Scorpio. You get silence so profound it echoes through every moment you shared. Magnet reason 6. They are magnetic and dangerous. There's something about a Scorpio. They don't have to speak to command attention. Their presence is gravitational. Their gaze cuts through pretense like a blade through silk. They draw you in, not with effort, but with energy. It's primal, ancient, like they carry wisdom from 1,000 lifetimes in their bones. But if you betray them, that same magnetism turns icy. Their silence becomes your punishment. Their distance feels like exile. I knew a Scorpio who never raised his voice, never retaliated. He simply pulled his energy back, and the person who wronged him spiraled without his presence, like a planet knocked out of orbit. That's the power of Scorpio energy. It doesn't need to attack. Its absence is enough to destroy. Because when they were with you, you were connected to something real. And when that energy disappears, you don't just feel loss. You feel emptiness. Cross Swords Reason 5. They don't fear conflict, they welcome it. Most people avoid confrontation like it's poison. Scorpios? They drink it like tea. Conflict doesn't scare them. It refines them. They don't raise their voices to be heard. They raise their truth. And when you've crossed them, they won't play petty games or sugarcoat their words. They'll look you in the eye, tell you exactly what you did, and walk away. One of my clients, a Scorpio woman, once told her partner during their final argument, "I'm not angry. I'm just finished." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just left the room and never came back. Scorpios don't argue to win. They confront to reveal. And once the truth is on the table, they no longer need the conversation. They're not afraid of losing people. They're afraid of losing themselves in relationships built on lies. Compass Reason 4. Their emotional radar is unmatched. You can lie to the world, but you can't lie to a Scorpio's soul. They pick up emotional vibrations like an antenna tuned to the truth. A shift in your tone, a hesitation in your smile, even the silence between your words. They know. They always do. A student of mine once shared how her Scorpio roommate confronted her before any proof surfaced. "You've changed," she said. Turns out, the betrayal had already begun, but hadn't been discovered yet. Except, it had. Not with facts, but with feeling. That's Scorpio. They trust their instincts more than your explanations. And they're rarely wrong. When you betray them, don't expect a big reveal. Expect that they already knew. And while you were fumbling with lies, they were preparing their exit. Performing Arts Reason 3. They destroy you with elegance. If a Scorpio chooses to respond, it won't be dramatic. It will be elegant. You won't see it coming. You won't even realize it's happening until it's already done. They don't raise hell. They raise standards. They won't humiliate you publicly. They'll just take away your access, quietly. A Scorpio man I met in a corporate setting once said this to someone who betrayed him. "I hope you grow into the truth I once saw in you." That was it. No insults. Just a verbal scalpel, precise and unforgettable. They don't need revenge to satisfy their ego. They want clarity. They want you to feel the mirror of your own actions without theatrics. And that's what makes it terrifying. It's not chaos. It's calm destruction wrapped in stillness. Fire Reason 2. They rise like the phoenix. Here's the part most people don't understand. Scorpios are born to rise. Pain doesn't crush them. It carves them into something stronger. Loss, betrayal, heartbreak. These don't define a Scorpio. They refine them. Like the mythical phoenix, they burn in silence and rise in brilliance. They return wiser, colder, more focused. Not to prove anything to you, but to remind themselves of who they are. One of my clients, after going through a bitter divorce, told me, "I was shattered, but now I'm unshakable because I rebuilt myself with fire, not fear." She was a Scorpio. When you betray a Scorpio, you're not destroying them. You're activating their next transformation. And when they return, they won't even look like the version you knew. You didn't break them. You built a better version of them. Ice Cube Reason 1. If you lose them, they don't come back. This is the most haunting truth of all. A Scorpio gives you everything: loyalty, devotion, protection, presence. But once you betray that, you lose everything. They don't revisit burnt bridges. They don't text at midnight. They don't check in months later. When a Scorpio says goodbye, it's not temporary. It's eternal. You won't get closure. You'll get absence. And in that absence, you'll realize just how rare their love was. I've seen people cry over Scorpios long after the relationship ended. Not because of what they said, but because of what they withdrew. When they're gone, they're gone. And all you'll have left is the echo of everything you broke. That's why you should never cross a Scorpio. Because what you lose is irreplaceable. Man in Lotus Position Closing Reflection, the Scorpio, and the Soul. Now that you've seen all 20 reasons, maybe you've started to realize something deeper. Scorpios aren't vengeful because they're cruel. They're intense because they feel. They don't punish, they protect. Not just themselves, but the sacredness of trust. They are the guardians of emotional truth, and once you violate that truth, you've exiled yourself from something profound. In a world full of superficial connections, a Scorpio gives you something real. But that realness comes with one rule. Respect the bond or lose it forever. Loudspeaker call to action CTA. If this video opened your eyes to the emotional power of Scorpio or reminded you of someone unforgettable, I invite you to reflect in the comments. Sparkles tell us. Have you loved a Scorpio? Lost one? Or one? We want to hear your truth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to understand what it means to love and lose a Scorpio. Because on the path to Buddhist wisdom, we don't just read the stars, we awaken the soul behind them.